There is a quiet truth hiding in plain sight. And once you see it, you can never fully unsee it in quantum physics. A single particle can exist in multiple states at the same time. Not one after another. Not one or the other. But all of them at once. And strangely enough, this is not just a story about particles in laboratories. It is a mirror of your own life. You are not only the person you think you are today. You are not limited to the role you've been playing, the habits you've repeated, or the identity you've learned to defend. You are a living field of possibilities. Multiple versions of you are quietly present right now, coexisting in what physics would call a field of potential. Some of these versions are confident, some are peaceful, some are free, some are still waiting to be chosen. Most people never hear this because life trains us to think in straight lines. Past leads to present, present leads to future, and we assume the future is just a longer extension of who we already are. But quantum reality doesn't move in straight lines. It waits. It hovers. It holds many outcomes at once until something very specific happens. In physics, that moment is called measurement. In life, that moment is awareness. Before a particle is observed, it doesn't make up its mind. It exists as a spread of probabilities. Only when observation happens does one state collapse into a single experience. The strange and beautiful part is this consciousness is not passive in this process. It participates, and in your life, consciousness plays the same role. Before you decide, before you commit, before you identify yourself as a certain kind of person, your life is also in a kind of superposition. You may feel it during times of transition, standing at the edge of retirement, or after a relationship ends. Sitting quietly late at night, wondering, is this really who I am now? That feeling of uncertainty isn't weakness. It's potential. You carry many selves inside you. The self who stays silent, the self who finally speaks, the self who settles, the self who begins again. They are not imaginary. They are energetic possibilities, like unopened letters waiting on a table, and none of them becomes real until you choose not with force, not with struggle, but with identification. Here is where many people misunderstand choice. Choice is not about effort. It's not about pushing harder or controlling every detail. Choice, in the quantum sense, is alignment. It is the moment you stop hovering between identities and gently say, this is who I am allowing myself to be. Think of a river for a moment. When a river flows naturally, it doesn't argue with gravity. It doesn't tense up and try to control its direction. It allows the landscape to guide it. But imagine a river trying to flow uphill, fighting itself every inch of the way. That tension is what many people call effort. True choice feels different. It feels like the river finally releasing its grip and flowing downhill. When you choose from awareness, your energy settles. The internal noise quiets. The endless mental debate begins to dissolve. And something subtle but powerful happens. Reality starts responding differently. This is why hesitation feels so exhausting. When you stay suspended between versions of yourself, life reflects that suspension. Opportunities appear blurry. Relationships feel unstable. Nothing quite lands. It's not punishment. It's feedback. The field is waiting for clarity, not perfection. You don't need to be 100% certain. Certainty comes later. What matters is coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and sense of self begin to point in the same direction, the wave collapses. One version of you steps forward, and the others fade not as losses, but as unrealized paths that no longer need your energy. Many people fear this moment because they believe choosing one life means killing off all the others. But quantum reality teaches something kinder. Potential doesn't disappear, it reorganizes. When you choose one state, you don't destroy the rest. You simply stop feeding them attention. And attention is the currency of experience. This is why two people can make the same external decision and live completely different lives afterward. One chooses from fear, bracing for loss. The other chooses from trust, open to discovery. The action looks the same. The vibration does not. and vibration is what shapes experience. You may notice this in small, ordinary moments. When you walk into a room feeling defensive, people respond one way. When you walk in grounded and at ease, the same room feels different. Nothing outside has changed, yet everything feels altered. That's not psychology alone. That's consciousness collapsing potential into experience. The mind often wants guarantees before it commits. It wants proof, safety, a detailed map of the future. But life doesn't work that way. The path appears when you step onto it, not before. Just like fog lifting a few feet ahead of your car at night, not all at once. This is where surrender becomes powerful. Surrender is not giving up. It is releasing the need to control outcomes while staying deeply present with your choice. It is allowing reality to meet you halfway. When you choose from this space, you may notice something almost uncanny. People arrive at the right time. Information shows up unexpectedly. Solutions seem to find you rather than the other way around. This is not magic. It is resonance. You are no longer sending mixed signals into the field. And here is a gentle reminder that often brings relief. Superposition doesn't end once you choose. Life is not a single, final collapse. It is a series of soft landings. Each time you outgrow an identity, a new field of potential opens. You are never trapped. You are always participating. The self you are today is not the last version of you. It is simply the one you are currently inhabiting. And even now, other possibilities are quietly waiting. Not demanding your attention, just available. So if you find yourself at a crossroads, uncertain, tired of overthinking, pause. Feel into who you are being, not what you are doing. Notice which version of you feels lighter, more honest, more alive. That feeling is not random. It is guidance. You don't need to fight your way into a new life. You don't need to force change through sheer willpower. You only need to allow yourself to stand fully in one place instead of hovering everywhere at once. When you do, the path doesn't need to be created. It reveals itself. And in that moment, life stops feeling like something you must wrestle into shape. It begins to feel like something that is finally moving with you, the way a river moves when it no longer resists its own flow. 1. Superposition, and why it does not belong only to laboratories. There is a quiet misunderstanding that has followed quantum physics since it first entered public awareness. The idea that these principles live only inside sterile laboratories, expensive machines, and equations meant for scientists alone, while ordinary human life somehow plays by simpler, more mechanical rules. That assumption feels comforting, but it is not true, and superposition is one of the clearest examples of why. In quantum physics, superposition describes a state in which a particle exists in multiple possible conditions at the same time, not switching rapidly between them, not hiding one behind another, but genuinely holding many possibilities at once until a measurement occurs. Only when something observes or measures the particle does one of those possibilities become the experienced reality, while the others quietly fall away. What often gets lost in simplified explanations is this: before the measurement, the particle is not confused, broken, or chaotic. It is not undecided in a human sense. It is perfectly stable in a deeper kind of order, an order that includes many outcomes without needing to rush toward one. This unchosen state is not disorder. It is coherence. It is potential arranged with precision, waiting for relationship, waiting for interaction, waiting for awareness. Nature does not panic inside superposition. It rests there. That detail matters, because most people unconsciously associate not choosing with failure, weakness, or laziness. We grow up being told that uncertainty is dangerous, that hesitation is a flaw, that you must always know who you are and where you are going. Yet physics quietly shows us something more compassionate. Before clarity, there is a natural phase of openness. Before form, there is space. Before a life collapses into a single story, it exists as many stories held together, without tension. When you look at superposition this way, something begins to soften inside you. You realize that not everything unresolved in your life is a mistake. Some of it is simply potential that has not yet been invited into form. This is where the bridge to human experience becomes unavoidable. Before you decide, before you commit, before you say this is who I am now, you also exist in a state very much like superposition. You may not call it that, but you feel it. It appears in moments when your life seems paused between chapters, when old identities no longer fit and new ones have not fully arrived. You feel it when you stand at a crossroads and notice that multiple futures feel real inside you. Not imaginary, not theoretical, but alive in your body. One version of you might be ready to slow down, to rest, to live more simply. Another version might feel an urge to begin again, to learn something new, to speak more honestly, to step into visibility. These versions do not cancel each other out. They coexist. They share the same inner space the way quantum possibilities share the same wave function. And just like the particle, you are not broken for feeling this way. You are whole. The strange thing is that we rarely give ourselves permission to remain in this state without judgment. We rush ourselves to choose, not because clarity has arrived, but because discomfort has. The mind wants relief. It wants certainty. It wants to collapse the wave quickly, even if the chosen outcome does not truly match the deeper self. This is how people end up living lives that feel slightly misaligned, as if something inside them never quite settled into place. Quantum physics offers a gentle correction here. It reminds us that collapse is not the enemy, but premature collapse is costly. When a system collapses before coherence is established, the result is unstable. In human terms, when you choose an identity to escape anxiety rather than from inner alignment, the choice tends to wobble. You may commit externally, but internally you keep oscillating, and life reflects that oscillation back to you. What makes superposition so powerful as a metaphor for human potential is not the mystery, but the patience embedded within it. Nature does not rush the process. It allows the full range of possibilities to exist until the moment of interaction arrives naturally. That interaction is not violent. It is precise. It is quiet. It is inevitable, but never forced. The same is true for you. Before you decide who you are becoming, something inside you is listening, watching, sensing which version feels most coherent, most alive, most true. This listening state is often misinterpreted as indecision, but in reality, it is intelligence at work. It is your deeper awareness scanning the field, much like a quantum system responding to its environment. Another important detail often overlooked is that superposition does not mean anything can happen at random. The possibilities that exist are constrained. They are shaped by the system itself. A particle does not suddenly become something unrelated to its nature. In the same way, your possible selves are not infinite fantasies. They emerge from your values, your experiences, your longings, your wounds, and your wisdom. They are you, expressed differently. This understanding dissolves a lot of fear. You are not standing in front of an abyss of meaningless choices. You are standing inside a structured field of meaningful potential. Each possibility carries information. Each one has weight. Each one resonates differently in your body, and your awareness is capable of feeling that resonance, even if the mind cannot yet explain it. Here is where the role of measurement becomes crucial. In physics, measurement is not just looking. It is interaction. It is contact. It is participation. Consciousness does not stand outside the system. It enters it. In your life, measurement looks like identification. The moment you say, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly and sincerely, "This is who I am allowing myself to be," something shifts. Energy reorganizes. Attention focuses. The wave collapses. Until that moment, however, it is not a failure to remain in superposition. It is a phase, a sacred one. It is the space where you are more than any single story, where you are not yet reduced to a label, a role, or a pattern, Many people never realize how rare and valuable this space is because they spend their lives trying to escape it. If you have ever felt like your life was on hold, like something was forming but not yet visible, this perspective can be deeply healing. It allows you to stop fighting the in-between. It invites you to rest there, not passively, but attentively, to notice which thoughts calm you and which ones tighten you, to sense which imagined futures bring softness and which ones bring contraction. This sensing is not daydreaming. It is alignment in progress. Superposition teaches us that reality is not built by force. It is shaped by relationship. The relationship between awareness and potential determines what becomes real. And awareness cannot be rushed without losing its sensitivity. So before the decision, before the commitment, before the story hardens into form, there is a moment of grace. A moment where nothing is wrong. A moment where you are not late. A moment where life is not demanding answers. Only presence. In that moment, you are not stuck. You are spacious. And when the time comes to choose, it will not feel like violence. It will feel like recognition, like the quiet relief of finally standing where you belong. Not because you had to, but because something inside you gently said, yes. This one, that is superposition. Not as an abstract theory, but as a lived human experience. It is the truth that before you become one life, you are many possibilities held in order, waiting not for pressure, but for awareness. 2. Human beings live in superposition every day without realizing it. Most people imagine superposition as something rare, exotic, reserved for moments of crisis or dramatic crossroads. But the truth is quieter and much closer to home. You live in superposition every single day, often without naming it, often without understanding it, and sometimes without trusting it. It shows up not as fireworks, but as a subtle inner tension, a feeling of standing in more than one place at once. Before every meaningful decision in life, you are never just one person. You are already many. You may appear calm on the outside, going about your routine, but inside you are holding multiple possible lives simultaneously. One version of you is ready to stay where you are, to preserve what is familiar, to protect the structure you have built. Another version is quietly restless, sensing that something essential has been outgrown, even if it cannot yet explain what comes next. These versions are not fighting because one is wrong and the other is right. They are simply present, coexisting within your awareness. Think about the moments when you felt pulled in opposite directions. The decision to remain in a relationship or to leave. The choice between continuing a career that feels safe and stepping into something uncertain but meaningful. The hesitation between speaking your truth and staying silent to keep the peace. In those moments, you were not confused. You were in superposition. You were the one who stays and the one who walks away. You were the one who continues and the one who releases. You were the one who feels fear and the one who feels courage. All of these were not imagined characters. They were living possibilities, carrying real emotional weight, real bodily sensations, real energy. You could feel them in your chest, in your stomach, in the way your breath changed when you leaned toward one option or the other. This is how superposition feels in human form. It is not abstract. It is intimate. What makes this difficult for many people is that we have been taught to mistrust this inner multiplicity. We are encouraged to believe that a strong person always knows what they want, that uncertainty is a sign of weakness or lack of direction. But life itself tells a different story. Growth rarely announces itself with certainty. More often, it arrives as a quiet discomfort with who you have been, paired with a vague curiosity about who you might become. This is why superposition is not a flaw in human consciousness. It is evidence of depth. It means you are not locked into a single rigid identity. It means your awareness is spacious enough to hold more than one truth at the same time. And that capacity is not something to fix. It is something to respect. The problem begins when the mind tries to rush this state to an ending. The mind dislikes ambiguity. It wants resolution, labels, answers it can point to and defend. so it often pushes you to collapse into a version of yourself too quickly, not because it is aligned, but because it feels safer than not knowing. Many lives become smaller at this stage, not because people lacked potential, but because they chose certainty over coherence. You can see this pattern clearly when people make decisions primarily to relieve anxiety. They accept roles they do not resonate with, stay in situations that slowly drain them, or abandon dreams before they have fully listened to them. From the outside, these choices look decisive. On the inside, they feel heavy. The wave has collapsed, but not cleanly. Part of the energy remains scattered. Living in superposition requires a different kind of courage, one that is rarely talked about. It is the courage to remain present without rushing, to allow multiple possibilities to exist without demanding that one of them justify itself immediately. This is not passivity. It is attentiveness. It is the willingness to stay awake in the unknown long enough for clarity to arise naturally. Another subtle truth is that these inner versions of you are not equal in vibration, even if they are equally present. Some feel contracted, tense, driven by fear of loss or rejection. Others feel softer, more spacious. Even if they come with uncertainty, the body knows the difference long before the mind does. Superposition gives you time to sense that difference without forcing a conclusion. This is why silence can be so revealing during periods of indecision. When external noise quiets down, you begin to notice which inner voices grow louder and which ones fade. Not the loud voices of fear or urgency, but the steady ones that speak without drama. These are not commands. They are invitations, and they become clearer the less you argue with them. It is important to understand that the versions of you that exist in superposition do not disappear simply because you ignore them. They remain active in the background of your awareness. When unacknowledged, they often express themselves as restlessness, dissatisfaction, or a vague sense that something is missing. This is not punishment. It is information. It is the field reminding you that not all possibilities have been brought into relationship with awareness yet. In quantum physics, a system remains in superposition until a measurement occurs. But measurement is not random. It happens through interaction. In human life, this interaction takes the form of identification. The moment you sincerely identify with one version of yourself, not as a strategy but as a recognition, the field begins to respond. That is the collapse. Until then, you are not failing life by standing between options. You are participating in it at a deeper level. You are allowing potential to fully present itself before taking form. This is especially important in later stages of life, when decisions are less about survival and more about authenticity. At that stage, rushing into the wrong identity carries a higher cost than waiting a little longer in uncertainty. There is also compassion to be found here. When you look back on your past indecisions, you may feel regret or self-judgment. You may tell yourself that you should have known better, acted faster, been braver. But from this perspective, you can see that many of those pauses were necessary. You were gathering coherence. You were learning how each possibility felt from the inside. You were not wasting time. You were listening. Superposition is not meant to last forever, but it is meant to be honored while it is present. It is the womb of choice, not its enemy. When respected, it leads to decisions that feel grounded rather than forced. Decisions that do not require constant defense afterward. Eventually, something shifts. It does not arrive as a dramatic epiphany. It arrives as a quiet settling. One version of you begins to feel more real than the others. Not louder, not more convincing, but more peaceful. The internal argument softens. The body relaxes. This is not because all doubt has vanished, but because alignment has begun. That moment is the measurement, not imposed by the world, but initiated by awareness. And when it happens, the other versions do not vanish in shame or failure. They simply step back. Having done their work, they existed to show you what was possible. Once one path is chosen consciously, the rest no longer need your attention. Understanding this changes how you relate to uncertainty forever. You stop seeing it as a problem to solve and start seeing it as a phase of intelligence. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What is trying to emerge?" And in that shift, something deeply healing takes place. You realize that you have never been lost. You have only been holding more than one future at once, and that is not confusion. That is potential, waiting patiently for awareness to say, "Now." 3. Consciousness is the measuring device of life. There is a moment in every life that passes so quietly most people miss it. A moment that does not announce itself with drama or fireworks. A moment that looks insignificant on the surface, but changes the entire direction of experience. In physics, this moment is called observation. In human life, it is called identification. And although it rarely feels powerful while it is happening, it is the point at which potential becomes reality. In quantum physics, a system in superposition collapses when it is observed, not because the observer forces it to change, but because observation establishes a relationship. The act of observing does not attack the system. It does not push it. It simply brings awareness into contact with potential, and that contact is enough to transform possibility into experience. Life works in the same way. Your reality does not begin with action. It begins with awareness, deciding where it belongs. Most people believe their lives are shaped primarily by what they do, the steps they take, the effort they apply, the discipline they maintain. Action matters, but it is not the first cause. Action follows identity. Before your hands move, something inside you has already said, quietly and often unconsciously, "This is who I am." And life responds not to your words or your plans, but to that inner recognition. This is why two people can take the same action and produce entirely different results. One acts from fear, trying to prove their worth or escape uncertainty. The other acts from alignment, feeling rooted in who they are becoming. On the outside, the behavior looks similar. On the inside, the measurement is different. Consciousness has identified with a different state, and the field responds accordingly. In physics, measurement is often misunderstood as a mechanical act, as if a device simply checks a box and forces a result. But at the quantum level, measurement is not separate from the system being measured. The observer becomes part of the equation. There is no clean division between subject and object. Awareness enters the field, and the field reorganizes itself around that awareness. In your life, consciousness plays the same role. It is not standing outside your experience, judging it from a distance. It is embedded within it. It participates. It selects not by effort, but by resonance. This is why reality often changes the moment you stop trying to change it. When you are struggling to become someone, you are still identifying as someone who is not yet that person. The struggle reinforces the old identity. But when something inside you settles and says, without tension or urgency, "This is me now," the struggle dissolves. Not because everything is solved, but because identity has shifted. That sentence, "This is me," does not have to be spoken aloud. It is not an affirmation repeated into a mirror. It is a quiet internal recognition, a subtle but decisive alignment. It may sound like acceptance, or honesty, or permission. It may arrive as relief. And when it does, something collapses into form. Consciousness does not choose by force. It chooses by sameness. It aligns with what feels true, even if that truth is still fragile, still forming. When you identify with a version of yourself, you are not commanding the universe to obey you. You are signaling coherence. And coherence is what organizes reality. Many people misunderstand this and attempt to use consciousness as a tool of control. They try to think the right thoughts, suppress unwanted emotions, or visualize outcomes while internally feeling disconnected from them. This is like trying to measure a quantum system without actually being present with it. The signal becomes distorted. The collapse is unstable. True measurement is honest. It includes what you feel, not just what you wish you felt. It includes your current state without judgment. Consciousness does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be sincere. This is why awareness is more powerful than willpower. Willpower tries to override the present moment. Awareness includes it. And inclusion creates integration. When you fully acknowledge who you are right now, without resistance, you create the conditions for transformation. Resistance delays collapse. Acceptance allows it. Think of it this way. When you walk into a room believing you do not belong, your body tightens, your voice changes, your attention narrows. People respond accordingly. When you walk into the same room grounded in a quiet sense of belonging, nothing external has changed. Yet the entire experience shifts. Consciousness has measured the moment differently, and reality has followed. This is not psychological trickery. It is a fundamental principle of interaction. The field responds to identity, not intention. Intention without identification remains theoretical. Identification without force becomes lived experience. This is why major changes in life often begin invisibly. Someone decides they are no longer the person who tolerates disrespect. Someone recognizes they are no longer defined by their past mistakes. Someone quietly allows themselves to be at peace instead of constantly proving something. Nothing dramatic happens in that instant. No announcement is made. But the measurement has occurred, and over time, the external world reorganizes to match it. Consciousness also explains why rushing action often backfires. When you act before identity has settled, your actions feel scattered. You start and stop. You doubt yourself mid-step. Life mirrors that inconsistency. But when identity stabilizes first, action becomes natural. You do not need to motivate yourself constantly, because behavior flows from alignment. This does not mean you wait passively forever. It means you respect sequence. Awareness first, identification next, action last. When this order is honored, effort decreases and effectiveness increases. Another subtle but important truth is that consciousness measures continuously, not just once. Every moment you are reinforcing or reshaping identity through attention. What you dwell on, what you emotionally engage with, what you repeatedly tell yourself is real. All of it contributes to ongoing measurement. This is not meant to create anxiety. It is meant to invite gentleness. You are always participating, even when you think you are not. This is also why change can feel uncomfortable at first. When you begin identifying with a new version of yourself, the field has not fully reorganized yet. Old patterns may still appear. Old reactions may surface. This does not mean the measurement failed. It means the collapse is stabilizing. Patience is part of coherence. The most profound shifts often happen when consciousness stops arguing with itself. When you stop oscillating between who you were and who you think you should be, and instead allow who you are becoming to take up space. This allowance is not passive. It is deeply active at the level of identity. There is a quiet dignity in this process. No one may notice it from the outside. Your life may look the same for a while, but inside, something has locked into place. And once that happens, reality cannot help but follow. Because consciousness is not separate from the world it experiences. So when life feels stuck, the most important question is not what should I do next, but who am I being right now? Not as a criticism, but as an inquiry. The answer does not need to be clever. It needs to be honest. From that honesty, measurement occurs. From measurement, form emerges. Consciousness does not shout its choices. It whispers them. It does not force the future. It recognizes the present. And in that recognition, potential quietly, faithfully, becomes real. 4. Choice is not effort. It is inner commitment. There comes a moment in life when something inside you grows tired of pushing, tired of forcing, tired of trying to make things happen through sheer tension. This moment often arrives quietly, after years of effort that produced results on the surface but never quite brought peace underneath. And in that moment, a deeper truth begins to reveal itself. Real choice does not feel like strain. It feels like settling. We have been taught to associate commitment with effort, as if choosing a direction in life requires tightening our fists, bracing our bodies, and preparing for struggle. We admire stories of grit and perseverance, and while endurance has its place, it is often confused with alignment. Many people are not exhausted because life is difficult, but because they are constantly trying to commit without having truly chosen. There is an important distinction here, one that changes everything once you see it clearly. Commitment is not the act of pushing yourself to continue despite inner resistance. That is endurance. Commitment is the moment you stop oscillating. It is the moment the internal argument ends. When you have not truly chosen, your energy remains divided. Part of you moves forward, while another part quietly pulls back. You may take action, but it feels heavy. You may say yes, but your body whispers no. This inner split is not a moral failure. It is simply a sign that superposition has not yet collapsed. Multiple versions of you are still active, still asking to be heard. True choice happens when you no longer need to convince yourself. It does not arrive with excitement or certainty. It arrives with calm. There is a subtle but unmistakable shift when this happens. The constant mental rehearsing fades. The need to seek reassurance from others softens. You stop scanning for escape routes. Something inside you says, without drama, I'm here now. This is inner commitment. It is not loud. It does not demand applause. It does not require you to explain yourself to anyone. It simply brings coherence to your energy. When commitment is real, energy stops oscillating. This is not metaphorical. You can feel it physically. The tightness in your chest eases. Your breathing deepens. Your attention becomes steadier. You are no longer pulled equally in opposite directions. And because of that, the world begins to feel less chaotic. Even if circumstances have not yet changed. Many people believe the path appears first and commitment follows. But lived experience reveals the opposite. The path appears because commitment has already occurred internally. Before there is clarity outside, there is stillness inside. Imagine standing at a fork in the road, constantly stepping one foot toward one path and then pulling it back toward the other. From that position, neither path can reveal itself. Both remain vague. But when you place both feet on one direction, even tentatively, the terrain begins to show itself. Details emerge. Obstacles become visible. Support becomes apparent. Not because the world suddenly became generous, but because your attention is no longer scattered. Standing still in one direction does not mean you will never adjust course. It means that for now, your energy has found a home. From that place, movement becomes natural instead of forced. This is why so much of what people call discipline feels like self-violence. They are trying to extract commitment from a place that has not yet chosen. They push themselves through resistance instead of listening to it. Over time, this creates burnout, resentment, and a quiet sense of betrayal toward oneself. Inner commitment feels different. It does not require constant motivation because it is fueled by coherence, not pressure. You do not need to remind yourself why you chose. You remember naturally. The choice holds you rather than the other way around. It is also important to understand that commitment is not certainty. You can commit without knowing how things will turn out. You can commit while still feeling some fear. What disappears is not fear, but doubt about who you are being. Fear may still pass through, but it no longer defines your direction. This is where many people misunderstand courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the absence of inner division. When you are no longer arguing with yourself, fear loses its power to paralyze. It becomes information instead of an obstacle. Another subtle truth is that commitment cannot be faked. You can tell yourself you have chosen, but if your energy continues to scatter, if you constantly look back, seek alternatives, or mentally rehearse escape plans, then the choice has not yet landed. This is not something to judge. It is something to notice. Life responds very precisely to this internal state. When you are half committed, reality mirrors that halfness. Opportunities come inconsistently. Results fluctuate. Progress feels fragile. Again, this is not punishment. It is reflection. The field is responding to oscillation. When commitment settles, the reflection changes, not necessarily immediately, but reliably. Actions begin to compound. Effort feels lighter. Even challenges seem more workable because your energy is no longer split between moving forward and pulling away. One of the most healing realizations is that you do not need to force yourself into commitment. You only need to wait until resistance has finished speaking. Resistance often carries important information. It may be pointing out misalignment, unresolved fear, or an unacknowledged truth. When you listen rather than override it, resistance eventually quiets. And when it does, commitment arises naturally. This is why timing matters. Commitment chosen too early becomes brittle. Commitment chosen too late becomes regretful. But commitment chosen at the right moment feels simple, almost obvious in hindsight. You may even wonder why it took so long to see. From this place, choice no longer feels like closing doors in fear. It feels like standing firmly enough that doors organize themselves around you. You do not need to chase every possibility. You allow the ones aligned with your commitment to find you. This is the paradox that surprises many people when you truly choose. Life feels more open, not more restrictive, because you are no longer wasting energy maintaining multiple identities. More energy becomes available for creativity, presence, and connection. Inner commitment is not dramatic. It does not shout, "This is forever." It simply says, "This is now, and that is enough." Life does not require eternal vows. It responds to present coherence. When you stand still in one direction, the path appears not because you demanded it, but because you finally allowed yourself to belong somewhere. And from that belonging, movement becomes effortless. Choice, then, is not about pushing harder. It is about stopping the inner tug-of-war. It is about letting energy settle where it naturally wants to rest. From that stillness, direction emerges. From that direction, life unfolds. And when you experience this even once, you understand something deeply reassuring. You were never meant to force your way forward. You were meant to choose, and then allow life to meet you there. 5. Why the longer you hesitate, the more reality begins to blur. There is a particular kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with the body and very little to do with age. A fatigue that settles in quietly when life seems unclear for too long. It is not the tiredness of hard work or even of loss. It is the tiredness of suspension. When you remain in superposition beyond its natural season, what once felt like openness begins to feel like fog. When you do not choose, you do not immediately lose anything. In fact, at first, it can feel safe. Possibilities remain open. Doors are not closed. Identities are not fixed. But over time, something subtle changes. The same state that once held potential begins to drain energy. Not because superposition is wrong, but because it was never meant to be permanent. In quantum terms, a system held indefinitely in superposition without interaction becomes unstable. In human terms, when awareness refuses to identify, energy has nowhere to land. It circulates endlessly, never grounding, never consolidating. This is when life begins to feel vague, as if you are present but not fully here. You may notice that during prolonged hesitation, reality stops giving clear feedback. Conversations feel inconclusive. Opportunities appear briefly and then disappear without explanation. Decisions feel half-made. Nothing quite confirms itself. This can be deeply frustrating, especially when you are sincerely trying to figure things out. But this lack of response is not life testing your patience or the universe withholding rewards. It is simply mirroring the signal you are sending. When your inner state is undecided, the field responds with ambiguity. Life is relational. It does not respond to desire alone. It responds to coherence. When your energy oscillates between options, reality reflects that oscillation. Not to punish you, but to remain accurate. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, because it removes the drama from confusion. It tells us that the blur we experience is not a cosmic mystery or a spiritual failure. It is feedback, neutral, precise, and impersonal. The longer hesitation continues, the more exhausting it becomes. Not because you are incapable of choosing, but because maintaining multiple identities at once requires constant mental effort. You are repeatedly imagining different futures, rehearsing conversations that never happen, weighing outcomes that never materialize. This mental motion consumes energy without producing movement. Over time, this leads to a dull sense of stagnation. You may still be busy, you may still be productive, but beneath it all, there is a feeling that life is not quite responding to you, like speaking into a room with poor acoustics, where your words echo back distorted or not at all. This is often when people begin to question themselves harshly. They wonder what is wrong with them, why they feel stuck, why motivation fades. But the issue is not lack of ability or intelligence, it is lack of signal. In any relational system, clarity invites response. When you speak clearly, people understand how to meet you. When you remain ambiguous, others hesitate as well. Life works the same way. It listens to the quality of your presence, not just the content of your thoughts. When you do not choose, you remain energetically unavailable. You are not fully here, but not fully elsewhere. The field does not know how to meet you because you have not arrived anywhere yet. This is why prolonged indecision often comes with a sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. It is the loneliness of not being anchored in yourself. You are present physically, but energetically dispersed, and life responds to presence, not proximity. Opportunities that come and go during this time are often misunderstood. People think they missed their chance or that timing was unfair. But often, the opportunity simply passed through because there was no stable place for it to land. Without commitment, opportunity has no gravity. This is not a moral judgment. It is a structural reality. Energy follows coherence. When coherence is absent, movement cannot consolidate. Another painful aspect of prolonged hesitation is the erosion of trust in oneself. Each time you delay a choice, you reinforce the idea that you cannot be relied upon to arrive. Over time, this weakens your relationship with your own intuition. You begin to doubt your capacity to know, to sense, to choose. The mind grows louder, trying to compensate. But clarity does not come from volume. It is important to say this gently but honestly. Life does not require you to choose perfectly. It requires you to choose clearly. A clear choice can be adjusted. An unclear one keeps you trapped in motion without direction. The blur you experience during hesitation is not life withholding meaning. It is life waiting for you to show up somewhere. The moment you do, even imperfectly, the fog begins to lift. This does not mean you should rush decisions out of fear of stagnation. Forced clarity is just another form of avoidance. But it does mean recognizing when hesitation has moved beyond listening and into avoidance. There is a point where waiting no longer serves awareness and begins to serve fear. When that point is reached, the most compassionate act is not to demand certainty from yourself, but to offer commitment, to choose one direction not because it guarantees success, but because it restores relationship with life. The moment you send a clear signal, reality begins to respond, not necessarily with ease, but with definition. Problems become visible. Support becomes noticeable. Movement resumes. Even challenges feel more manageable because you are no longer suspended. There is a deep relief in this. Not because everything becomes simple, but because nothing feels vague anymore. You know where you stand. Life knows where to meet you. So if reality feels blurred, if nothing seems to stick, if opportunities slip through your fingers without explanation, pause and look inward with kindness. Ask not what you are missing, but where you have not yet arrived. Ask not why life is silent, but whether you have spoken clearly. The universe is not testing you. It is listening, and clarity, even imperfect clarity, is a language it understands very well. 6. The collapse of possibility is not a loss. One of the deepest fears people carry, often without realizing it, is the fear that choosing one life means burying all the others. This fear hides beneath hesitation, beneath endless analysis, beneath the quiet grief people feel when they sense time moving forward while they remain suspended. It whispers that commitment is a kind of death, that saying yes to one direction means saying no to many others forever. But this fear is built on a misunderstanding of how reality actually works. In everyday thinking, choice feels like subtraction. You choose this job, you lose that one. You choose this relationship, you lose all the others. You choose this version of yourself, and all the alternative lives you might have lived seem to disappear into nothing. From that perspective, commitment feels heavy, almost tragic. It feels like narrowing rather than becoming. Quantum reality tells a different story, one that is far more compassionate and far more accurate. In quantum physics, when a state collapses, potential is not destroyed, it is expressed. The wave does not vanish into emptiness. It becomes a particle. What was once spread across many possibilities takes form as one lived experience. Nothing is lost. Something is realized. This distinction matters deeply when applied to human life. When you choose a path, you are not killing off your other possibilities. You are allowing one of them to become real. The others were never meant to be lived simultaneously. They existed as potential, not as parallel lives you were supposed to manage all at once. The idea that you must somehow honor every possible version of yourself is not wisdom. It is paralysis disguised as openness. Many people stay trapped in the illusion of keeping options open long past the point where it serves them. They believe they are preserving freedom, but what they are actually preserving is fragmentation. They carry multiple identities lightly, never fully inhabiting any of them. Over time, this creates a quiet sense of emptiness, as if life is happening nearby but never quite landing. The illusion here is subtle. It suggests that by not choosing, you are somehow living more fully, that holding all possibilities keeps you richer. In reality, you are living less fully, because experience requires form, meaning requires embodiment. Potential without expression remains abstract, and abstraction cannot nourish the soul. When quantum potential collapses, it does not mourn what it could have been. It becomes what it is. Nature does not grieve unrealized possibilities. It trusts the intelligence of the process. There is something profoundly instructive in that. In human terms, the versions of you that remain unchosen do not disappear in suffering. They simply return to the field. They were not wasted. They informed you. They showed you what mattered. They helped you feel your own edges. Once their role is complete, they no longer need your energy. The pain people associate with choosing often does not come from the loss of potential, but from attachment to illusion, the illusion that you were supposed to be everything at once, the illusion that fulfillment lies in maximizing options rather than inhabiting one deeply. There is a quiet maturity that arrives when you understand this. You stop treating life like a menu you must sample completely. You begin to treat it like a meal meant to be eaten slowly, with presence. Choosing one path does not mean the others were mistakes. It means they were never meant to be lived simultaneously. They existed to guide you toward alignment, not to burden you with infinite responsibility. This understanding is especially healing for people who look back on their lives with regret. They imagine alternate timelines where things turned out better, easier, happier. They replay old decisions, wondering what would have happened if they had chosen differently. From the quantum perspective, those alternate versions were real as potential, but they were never meant to coexist with the life you are living now. They were informational, not obligatory. You did not fail them. You fulfilled one. Another important truth emerges here. When you choose and allow a possibility to collapse into experience, you are not closing yourself off from future growth. Collapse is not the end of evolution. It is the beginning of expression. Once one state becomes real, new potentials arise from within it. Life continues to unfold in layers. This is why people who commit deeply often experience more freedom over time, not less. By fully inhabiting one version of themselves, they create a stable foundation from which new possibilities can emerge. Depth creates expansion. Fragmentation does not. There is also a tremendous relief in letting go of the fantasy of all at once. Many people carry an unspoken expectation that life should somehow allow them to be everything they could imagine themselves being. This expectation is exhausting. It sets an impossible standard and turns every choice into a perceived failure. Letting that fantasy go is not giving up on potential. It is honoring reality. When you stop trying to live every possible life, you gain the ability to live one life fully. Presence replaces anxiety. Depth replaces comparison. Meaning replaces speculation. The collapse of possibility becomes an act of devotion rather than loss. You devote your attention, your energy, your care to what is real now, and what is real responds. This does not mean you never grieve what might have been. Grief is natural. It is part of releasing illusion. But grief is not evidence of mistake. It is evidence of sensitivity. It means you cared. And caring is not something to regret. In quantum physics, collapse happens cleanly. In human life, it often happens gradually. You may still feel echoes of other possibilities even after choosing. Old longings may surface. Old identities may knock on the door. This does not mean you chose wrong. It means you are human. Over time, as you continue to inhabit your chosen path with sincerity, those echoes soften, not because they were suppressed, but because they are no longer needed. Energy consolidates. Life gains texture. Experience deepens. One of the most liberating realizations is that you do not owe your life to every version of yourself you once imagined. You owe your life to presence. You owe it to honesty. You owe it to what is alive now. The idea that you must keep every door open to be wise is a misunderstanding. Wisdom knows when to close doors gently, not in fear, but in trust. Closed doors do not represent loss. They represent focus. In this light, choice becomes an act of compassion toward yourself. Instead of dragging multiple identities through time, you allow one to breathe, to grow, to express itself without competition. The collapse of possibility is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning of reality. And reality, when fully inhabited, has a way of offering far more richness than imagination ever could. When you release the illusion of all at once, you gain the gift of now. And in that gift, life finally has something solid to meet. You were never meant to be everything. You were meant to be something real. 7. The inner state determines which version of life gets lived. There is a quiet truth that only becomes obvious after you have lived long enough to watch the same decisions lead to very different lives. Two people can choose the same job, the same relationship, the same path forward, and yet years later, one feels fulfilled while the other feels diminished. From the outside, their choices look identical. From the inside, they were never choosing from the same place. The difference is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is not even the decision itself. The difference is the state of consciousness from which the decision was made. Every choice is made from a certain inner posture. Sometimes that posture is fear. Sometimes it is trust. Sometimes it is exhaustion. Sometimes clarity. Sometimes quiet readiness. And although the mind likes to focus on outcomes, life responds first to the state. When you choose from fear, even a reasonable decision can feel heavy. Fear contracts awareness. It narrows perception. It focuses attention on what might go wrong, what could be lost, what must be controlled. In that state, the world feels sharp, unpredictable, and demanding. You may succeed outwardly, but inwardly you remain braced, as if something is always about to fall apart. When you choose from trust, the same decision carries a different quality. Trust does not mean blind optimism or denial of difficulty. It means a deeper sense that you are not alone in the process, that life is not hostile, that you can meet what comes without abandoning yourself. In that state, challenges still arise, but they feel workable rather than threatening. You stay present instead of defensive. This is why reality cannot be reduced to choices alone. Choices are visible. States are subtle, and subtle things shape experience more than obvious ones. Think about moments in your own life when you said yes while feeling pressured, rushed, or afraid of disappointing someone. Compare those moments with times when you said yes because something inside you felt settled. Even if the future was uncertain, the external action may have been the same, but the lived experience was not. One drained you, the other strengthened you. The inner state is like the lens through which life is experienced. The same scene viewed through different lenses produces different meanings. One person sees a challenge and feels attacked. Another sees the same challenge and feels invited to grow. The event does not change. The interpretation does. And interpretation shapes reality over time. This is not positive thinking. It is perceptual truth. Consciousness organizes experience around the state it inhabits. When fear leads, attention becomes selective. You notice threats more easily than support. You interpret ambiguity as danger. You react quickly, often defensively. Over time, this creates a reality that appears to confirm your fears. Not because the world is conspiring against you, but because your state filters what you perceive and how you respond. When trust leads, attention opens. You notice nuance. You allow space for things to unfold. You respond instead of react. Over time, life feels more cooperative, not because problems vanish, but because your relationship to them changes. This explains why advice alone rarely transforms lives. You can tell someone exactly what to do, but if they act from fear, the result will reflect fear. You can give the same advice to someone acting from trust, and the outcome will reflect trust. The instruction is the same. The consciousness applying it is not. Many people try to fix their lives by changing decisions while leaving their inner state untouched. They move cities, change partners, switch careers, hoping that a new choice will finally bring peace. Sometimes it helps temporarily, but if the state remains anxious, guarded, or self-doubting, the same patterns quietly reappear in new forms. This is not because people are broken. It is because state precedes experience. The most important moment in any decision is not when you act, but when you check in with yourself before acting. Not to analyze endlessly, but to notice. Are you choosing to escape discomfort or to honor truth? Are you choosing to avoid loss or to allow growth? Are you choosing because you feel pressured or because something inside you feels ready? These questions are not meant to judge. They are meant to clarify. They bring awareness to the state that is about to shape experience. Choosing from fear does not make you weak. It makes you human. Fear is a protective response, but when fear dominates choice, life becomes smaller. You may gain security, but you lose vitality. You may avoid pain, but you also avoid depth. Choosing from trust does not make life easy. It makes it meaningful. Trust allows you to remain open in the presence of uncertainty. It allows you to stay connected to yourself while moving forward, and that connection changes everything. One of the most healing realizations is that you do not need to eliminate fear before choosing from trust. Trust is not the absence of fear. It is the decision not to let fear be the author of your life. Fear can come along for the ride. It just cannot drive. This is where inner work becomes practical, not as a self-improvement project, but as a way of learning how to recognize your state before you choose. When you become familiar with your own inner climate, you stop mistaking urgency for intuition and pressure for clarity. You begin to notice subtle signals, the tightness that accompanies fear-based decisions, the quiet steadiness that accompanies trust-based ones. The difference is not dramatic, but it is consistent. And once you learn to recognize it, you cannot unlearn it. Over time, this awareness builds confidence, not because you always choose correctly, but because you choose consciously. Even when outcomes are difficult, you do not feel betrayed by yourself. You know you acted from alignment. That knowledge is deeply stabilizing. This is also why regret softens when viewed through the lens of state. You may look back and wish you had chosen differently. But when you remember the state you were in at the time, compassion arises. You see that you chose the best you could from where you were. That understanding frees you from self-punishment and opens space for growth. Life does not judge your choices. It responds to your state. And states are not fixed. They evolve as awareness deepens. As you learn to choose from trust more often, not perfectly, but sincerely, something subtle changes. You stop demanding guarantees from life. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become more resilient, not because things go your way, but because you remain connected to yourself regardless of outcome. The same decision made from trust creates a different life because it invites a different relationship with experience. You stay present instead of braced. You remain open instead of defended. You meet life as a participant rather than a victim. In this way, the question, "What should I choose?" slowly transforms into a more powerful one. From where am I choosing? And that question, asked gently and honestly, reshapes everything. Your life is not built by decisions alone. It is shaped by the consciousness that makes them. When you understand this, you stop chasing the perfect choice and begin cultivating the inner state that turns any choice into a meaningful path. That is where freedom truly lives. 8. You do not need certainty. You need coherence. There is a belief so deeply woven into human thinking that most people never question it. The belief that you must be completely certain before you move forward. That clarity is a prerequisite for action. That confidence must come first and movement second. On the surface, this sounds reasonable. In lived experience, it quietly keeps people frozen for years. No one waits until they are 100% certain to choose, because 100% certainty does not exist at the beginning of any meaningful path. It never has. What exists instead is a quieter signal, less dramatic than certainty, but far more reliable. That signal is coherence. Coherence is the feeling that something inside you is no longer arguing with itself. It does not mean all questions are answered. It means the inner noise has softened enough for you to take a step without tearing yourself apart. It is not the absence of doubt. It is the presence of alignment. Certainty often arrives later, not as a thunderbolt, but as recognition. You look back and realize that what once felt uncertain now feels obvious. Not because the path was clear in advance, but because walking it revealed its shape. Life teaches through movement, not through guarantees. Many people delay their lives waiting for a feeling that never comes. They wait to feel completely ready, completely confident, completely sure. In the meantime, time passes, energy disperses, and self-trust slowly erodes. The tragedy here is not that they choose wrong, but that they do not choose at all. Reality does not require you to understand everything before you engage with it. It does not ask you to see the entire road. It responds to presence, not prediction. When you show up consistently in one direction, life begins to organize itself around that direction. Think of learning to walk. No child waits until they fully understand balance, gravity, and muscle coordination before taking a step. They wobble, they fall, they try again. Certainty does not precede movement. Movement creates certainty. And the same principle quietly governs adult life, even though we often forget it. Consistency is how reality learns who you are. Not through declarations, not through promises, but through repeated presence. When you return, again and again to the same direction, even imperfectly, the field begins to respond. Patterns stabilize, feedback becomes clearer. Support appears in unexpected ways. This is why scattered effort produces scattered results. When you change direction repeatedly, not from growth but from doubt, life cannot meet you anywhere. It keeps adjusting to your shifts, never settling long enough to build momentum. This can feel like bad luck, but it is simply the reflection of inconsistency. Consistency, on the other hand, creates a kind of gravity, not because everything becomes easy, but because things become defined. Obstacles reveal themselves clearly. Allies recognize you. Your own energy begins to consolidate. You stop leaking attention into endless alternatives and start inhabiting one lived reality. There is a subtle but important difference between flexibility and inconsistency. Flexibility responds to feedback. Inconsistency reacts to fear. One refines direction, the other abandons it. Learning to tell the difference is part of maturity. You do not need certainty to begin. You need enough inner agreement to stay present when things become uncomfortable. Consistency is not stubbornness. It is devotion to a direction long enough for truth to reveal itself. This is especially important to understand in a culture that glorifies sudden breakthroughs and overnight transformations. Real change rarely happens that way. It happens through repeated, often unremarkable moments of choosing to stay engaged. It happens when you continue showing up even when enthusiasm fades and clarity wavers. Life responds to that kind of presence. Not immediately, not always visibly, but reliably. There is also a deep kindness in this principle. It means you are not required to be perfect. You are not required to know everything. You are not required to eliminate doubt before moving forward. You are only asked to be honest enough to stay aligned with what you have chosen. At least for now. When you remain consistent, certainty slowly emerges as a byproduct. You begin to trust yourself not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because you see that you can meet whatever arises. Confidence grows not from control, but from resilience. Many people misunderstand confidence as a personality trait. In reality, confidence is memory. It is the memory of staying present through uncertainty and discovering that you survived. I learned and grew. That memory cannot be built through thinking alone. It is built through experience. This is why overthinking often leads to paralysis. The mind tries to simulate certainty in advance, but simulations lack the feedback that only reality can provide. Without feedback, doubt multiplies. With feedback, even difficult information becomes grounding. Consistency invites feedback, and feedback is what sharpens clarity. Another quiet truth is that reality is generous with those who stay, not with those who cling rigidly, but with those who remain in relationship. When you keep showing up, life meets you halfway. It offers correction, support, and sometimes redirection, but always in response to presence. When you disappear emotionally, jumping from option to option, life cannot respond because there is no stable point of contact. Consistency creates that point. This does not mean you never change course. It means you change course consciously, not reactively. It means you give a direction enough time to reveal its nature before abandoning it. It means you respect the intelligence of unfolding. Certainty, when it comes, often feels surprisingly quiet. It does not shout, "This is it forever." It simply says, "I am here," and that is enough to continue. One of the most liberating realizations is that you are not being graded on your choices. Life is not waiting for you to prove that you picked the correct path. It is responding to how fully you inhabit the one you are on. Depth matters more than correctness. When you understand this, pressure begins to ease. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. You stop interpreting doubt as failure. You learn to move with uncertainty instead of against it. Consistency also heals self-trust. Each time you stay present instead of abandoning yourself at the first sign of discomfort, you strengthen your relationship with your own awareness. Over time, this creates an inner steadiness that no external certainty could ever provide. This steadiness becomes a compass, not a map, but a direction-sensing capacity. You may not know exactly where you are going, but you know when you are drifting away from yourself. That knowledge is far more valuable than detailed plans. Reality responds to this steadiness. It clarifies, it sharpens, it opens doors that remain invisible to those who keep scanning for alternatives instead of inhabiting one path. You do not need to feel sure to be sincere. You do not need guarantees to be committed. You do not need to see the end to take the next step. You need coherence. You need enough inner agreement to stand in one place and say, gently but firmly, "I am here now." From that place, life begins to answer. Certainty is not the entrance. It is the echo that comes later. After you have walked far enough to hear your own footsteps and recognize that you are no longer lost. And when that recognition arrives, it will not feel like triumph. It will feel like calm. Like the quiet satisfaction of realizing that consistency, not certainty, carried you where you needed to go. 9. When you choose, the world begins to reorganize. There is a subtle shift that happens after a true choice is made, one that is easy to miss if you are only looking for dramatic signs. It does not arrive with fireworks or sudden miracles. It arrives quietly, almost modestly, through small changes that seem ordinary until you notice their timing. And once you notice them, you realize something important has changed beneath the surface of your life. When you truly choose, not impulsively, not out of pressure, but from inner commitment, the world begins to respond in ways that feel uncannily precise. People show up at just the right moment. Conversations happen that seem oddly relevant. Information finds its way to you without effort. Doors you assumed were closed quietly unlock, not because you forced them, but because you are finally standing where they can open. This is not magic. It is synchronization. Before a real choice is made, your energy is scattered. You are partly here, partly elsewhere, scanning alternatives, holding escape routes open. In that state, life has difficulty meeting you. It sends signals, but they pass through without landing. Opportunities brush past instead of connecting. Nothing quite lines up. Once you choose, something stabilizes. Your attention stops drifting. Your presence gathers. And that coherence creates a signal strong enough for the world to respond to. Life is not random in the way we often assume. It is relational. It responds to clarity of presence more than to desire. When your inner state becomes consistent, the environment reorganizes itself around that consistency. You may notice this first in very small ways. A book falls into your hands that answers a question you have been carrying. A stranger mentions something that confirms a direction you were uncertain about. A delayed email suddenly arrives with exactly the information you need. None of these things are dramatic on their own. What makes them striking is their timing. They appear not when you are anxious or searching desperately, but after you have settled into a direction, after you have stopped asking life to prove itself to you, after you have quietly said, "This is where I am standing now." From that place, synchronization becomes visible. Many people dismiss these moments because they seem too ordinary to matter. But ordinary is exactly how coherence expresses itself. Life does not shout when alignment occurs. It adjusts. Think of tuning an old radio. When the dial is slightly off, the signal crackles. You hear fragments, noise, distortion. When you turn the dial just enough, the signal becomes clear. Nothing dramatic happened to the broadcast. You simply aligned with it. When you choose, you tune yourself to a frequency. And on that frequency, certain people, ideas, and opportunities become audible. Others fade into static. This is not because the world changed overnight, but because your relationship to it did. One of the most overlooked aspects of this process is that it does not require effort. In fact, effort often interferes with it. When you are forcing outcomes, you are still signaling doubt. You are saying, "I am here, but I don't trust that being here is enough." Life hears that signal and responds cautiously. When you rest into your choice, when you allow yourself to inhabit it without constantly checking for alternatives, your signal becomes cleaner, and a clean signal travels farther. This is why people often report that once they truly committed, things started falling into place. It is not because the universe suddenly decided to reward them. It is because they became available to what was already trying to meet them. Availability is an underappreciated state. It is not passive. It is receptive. It means you are present enough to notice what is being offered. When you are half committed, you are half available. When you are fully present, life can find you. This reorganization often begins internally before it becomes external. Your thoughts become less scattered. Your decisions feel simpler. You stop second-guessing every step. That internal order reflects outwardly. Conversations become clearer. Boundaries feel easier to maintain. Time seems to organize itself more efficiently. Then external shifts follow. Sometimes slowly. Sometimes surprisingly fast. People appear who resonate with the version of you that has chosen. Not necessarily people you expected, but people who fit. Old relationships may fall away, not through conflict, but through natural fading. New connections form with ease. Again, this is not loss. It is alignment. Information behaves the same way. When you are undecided, information overwhelms you. Everything seems relevant. Nothing feels decisive. When you choose, information sorts itself. What matters stands out. What does not quietly loses urgency. This is one of the most practical benefits of choosing. Mental noise reduces. Focus increases. Not because you forced discipline, but because coherence simplified your inner landscape. Doors opening is another phrase people use without fully understanding it. Doors rarely swing open dramatically. More often, they stop being locked. You notice that something you assumed was impossible is simply accessible. A conversation you thought would be awkward becomes natural. A resource you thought was unavailable turns out to be within reach. From the outside, it may look like luck. From the inside, it feels like relief. It is important to say this clearly. None of this means life becomes effortless or free of challenge. Choosing does not eliminate difficulty. It clarifies it. You still encounter obstacles, but they are obstacles on your path, not distractions pulling you sideways. They have meaning. They ask something of you. They help shape you rather than exhaust you. When you are aligned, even resistance feels purposeful. When you are not, even ease feels hollow. This is why the same external circumstances can feel either supportive or draining depending on whether you have chosen. A demanding job can feel meaningful or oppressive. A quiet life can feel peaceful or empty. The difference is not circumstance. It is coherence. The world reorganizes itself around coherence because coherence creates predictability at an energetic level. Life knows how to meet someone who is present. It does not know how to meet someone who is everywhere at once. Another subtle shift that occurs after choosing is a change in how you interpret events. You stop seeing everything as a sign you must decode anxiously. You stop asking, "Is this right? Is this wrong?" Instead, you ask, "What is this asking of me now?" That shift alone reduces stress dramatically. When you trust your direction, you stop requiring constant confirmation. And paradoxically, confirmation arrives more easily. This is not blind faith. It is grounded trust. Trust rooted in presence rather than fantasy. You are not trusting outcomes. You are trusting your capacity to respond. That capacity is what life recognizes and responds to. Over time, these small reorganizations accumulate. Life begins to feel more fluid, less like a series of battles, and more like a conversation. You act. Life responds. You adjust. Life clarifies. The relationship deepens. People often wait for life to change before they commit, but the sequence works the other way around. Commitment invites reorganization. Reorganization creates visible change. This is why waiting for perfect conditions rarely works. Conditions do not become perfect on their own. They become workable in response to clarity. When you choose, you are not demanding that the world rearrange itself for you. You are simply standing still long enough for it to find you. This standing still is not stagnation. It is presence. It is the willingness to be somewhere fully instead of everywhere partially. And from that presence, life begins to cooperate. Not dramatically, not instantly, but reliably. When you look back later, you may be tempted to call it fate or luck. But if you are honest, you will recognize the moment things began to shift. It was not when circumstances changed. It was when you stopped wavering. That is when the world began to listen. Not because you were special, but because you were clear. And clarity, even quiet clarity, is one of the most powerful forces there is. 10. Superposition does not end. It simply shifts levels. One of the most comforting truths to discover, especially after years of fearing wrong choices, is that life is not a single irreversible collapse, even when you choose. Even when a version of you becomes real and lived, you are not locked inside it forever. Superposition does not disappear. It changes levels. Many people carry an unspoken anxiety that once they commit, their story is sealed. That identity becomes a cage. That choosing means forever. This fear often keeps people from fully inhabiting their lives. They stay half-committed, leaving doors emotionally ajar, just in case. But this fear misunderstands how growth actually works. When you choose and live a version of yourself, you are not ending potential. You are expressing it at one level. Beneath that expression, awareness continues to evolve, and as awareness deepens, new possibilities quietly begin to form. Life is not a single wave collapsing once. It is a series of gentle collapses, each one allowing a clearer version of you to take shape. At one stage of life, your superposition may revolve around survival and stability. Later, it may shift toward meaning, contribution, or peace. At each stage, you choose, and at each stage, something settles. But the settling is not final. It is appropriate for that level of consciousness. This is why a life that once felt right can later feel restrictive. Not because it was a mistake, but because you have grown beyond the level at which it was chosen. New questions emerge, new sensitivities awaken, and with them, a new field of potential opens. Superposition moves upward with awareness. When you look back at earlier versions of yourself, you may wonder how you ever lived that way. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. You recognize that you could not have chosen differently then, because the awareness required for that choice had not yet formed. That realization brings compassion, not regret. Each collapse of potential clarifies you. It sharpens your sense of what matters. It refines your values. It reveals edges you could not see before. And from those edges, new possibilities arise. This process is not dramatic. It does not require reinvention every few years. It often happens quietly, through subtle shifts in what feels meaningful. Something that once excited you loses its pull. Something that once frightened you begins to feel natural. You do not force these changes. You notice them. This noticing is the beginning of a new superposition. At a deeper level of consciousness, you are no longer choosing between obvious opposites. You are choosing between nuances, between ways of being rather than roles, between presence and distraction, between depth and comfort. The choices become quieter, but more consequential. And again, awareness does the measuring. You may find that even within a chosen life, multiple versions of you still exist. The you who reacts quickly, the you who pauses, the you who defends, the you who listens. Each moment becomes a micro superposition. Each response, a gentle collapse. In this way, life is constantly refining you. Not through pressure, but through attention. Each choice brings you into sharper focus. You are not becoming someone else. You are becoming more yourself. This understanding dissolves the fear of being trapped. You realize that identity is not static. It is fluid, responsive, alive. What remains consistent is not the role you play, but the awareness that experiences it, even when circumstances appear fixed. Awareness continues to move, and where awareness moves, possibility follows. This is especially important to remember during times when life feels repetitive or narrow. You may think you have exhausted your options, that nothing new can emerge. But often, what has ended is not possibility, but a particular level of expression. Beneath it, something new is already forming. Superposition at deeper levels does not announce itself loudly. It arrives as restlessness without anxiety, curiosity without urgency, longing without desperation. It invites exploration rather than escape. Life becomes less about dramatic change and more about subtle alignment. Less about becoming someone new and more about removing what no longer fits. Each collapse of potential brings clarity. Each clarity brings simplicity. Over time, you stop seeking constant expansion. You begin to value refinement. This is where maturity lives. Not in endlessly chasing possibilities, but in allowing each one to fully shape you before moving on. The beauty of this process is that it never rushes. You are not behind. You are not late. Each phase unfolds when awareness is ready to inhabit it. And when it does, choice feels natural rather than forced. You may notice that as superposition shifts levels, fear loses its grip. The stakes feel different. You trust the process more, not because life has always been easy, but because you have seen how each collapse led you somewhere real. This trust is earned, not imagined. Eventually, something else changes. You stop seeing life as a series of decisions to get right. You begin to see it as a dialogue between awareness and experience. Choices arise. You meet them. Potential collapses. You live it. Awareness deepens. New potential emerges. The cycle continues. This is not instability. It is evolution. You are not meant to settle once and be done. You are meant to settle, live, learn, and then settle again at a deeper level. Each time, the version of you that emerges is more integrated, more honest, more whole. Superposition does not end because consciousness does not end. It refines, it clarifies, it moves inward even as life moves forward. And when you understand this, a great burden lifts. You no longer fear choosing. You no longer fear committing. You know that no choice is final in the way fear imagines. It is final only for that level of awareness. Life does not trap you. It teaches you. Each gentle collapse of potential is not an ending, but a revelation. It shows you who you are right now, clearly enough to live it. And once you have lived it fully, awareness opens again, quietly, patiently, ready for the next unfolding. This is the rhythm of a conscious life, not dramatic, not mystical, but deeply human. A life where potential becomes experience, experience becomes wisdom, and wisdom opens the door to possibility once more. And in that rhythm, you are never finished. You are always becoming. The path appears when you stop hesitating. There is a quiet moment that comes near the end of every long inner journey. A moment that does not feel like victory and does not look like certainty, but feels like something softer and far more real. It is the moment you realize that life was never asking you to figure everything out in advance. It was asking you to arrive. So many people move through life believing they need a complete map before they can begin. A clear picture of every turn, every risk, every possible outcome. And because no such map exists, they remain suspended, waiting, thinking, preparing, revising, doubting, not because they lack courage, but because they were taught the wrong sequence. Life does not unfold like a map that has already been drawn. It unfolds like fog. You may have experienced this before, perhaps driving at night through unfamiliar roads. The headlights do not reveal the entire journey. They reveal only a short stretch ahead, just enough to move forward safely. If you demanded to see the entire road before driving, you would never leave the driveway. Yet somehow, in life, we expect that impossible visibility before we allow ourselves to take a step. This expectation is the source of so much unnecessary suffering. The truth is simple, even if it takes a lifetime to accept it fully. The path appears when you stop hesitating, not because hesitation is wrong, but because movement clarifies what thinking cannot. Hesitation keeps you suspended between identities. It keeps you asking, who should I be, instead of gently answering, who am I right now? And life does not respond to who you might become someday. It responds to who you are being in this moment. When you stand still in indecision, the fog remains thick, not as punishment, not as a test, but because there is no reference point from which clarity can emerge. Fog lifts relative to movement. It reveals itself in response to direction. This is why choosing is not about predicting the future. It is about locating yourself in the present. You do not need to see the entire journey. You do not need reassurance that everything will work out. You do not need to eliminate doubt or fear. You only need to choose who you are in this moment. Not dramatically, not heroically. Simply and honestly. Who are you right now? When you stop negotiating with fear, who are you right now? When you stop asking permission from the past, who are you right now? When you allow yourself to stand somewhere instead of everywhere, that answer, whatever it is, becomes the ground beneath your feet. Once you stand there, reality begins to do its work, not all at once, not perfectly, but faithfully. The world responds to presence. It responds to coherence. It responds to the quiet stability of someone who is no longer oscillating. When you stop hesitating, you stop sending mixed signals. And when the signal becomes clear, life knows how to meet you. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes responsive. Challenges still arise, but they arise within a context that makes sense. You are no longer battling chaos. You are navigating terrain. There is a profound difference between those two experiences. Navigating terrain implies direction, even if the path is rough. Battling chaos implies randomness and exhaustion. The difference between them is not circumstance. It is choice. Choice, not as effort, but as identity. When you choose who you are, even temporarily, the inner conflict quiets. Energy that was once spent holding multiple versions of yourself apart becomes available for living. Your attention sharpens. Your presence deepens. You become reachable, both to yourself and to life. This is when small confirmations begin to appear, not as grand signs, but as subtle alignments, a conversation that lands at the right moment, a piece of information that clarifies something you had been struggling with, a feeling of rightness that replaces urgency. These are not rewards. They are responses. They are life saying, "I can find you now." Many people misunderstand this and believe they must feel confident before they choose. In reality, confidence often comes after you have walked far enough to trust your own footsteps. It is built through movement, not contemplation. When you look back on your life, the moments that shaped you most were rarely the ones where you felt completely ready. They were the moments where you moved despite uncertainty, where you trusted something deeper than logic, where you allowed yourself to step forward without guarantees. Those moments did not ruin your life. They revealed it. Even the choices that led to difficulty were not wasted. They taught you something essential about who you are and what you value. They refined your awareness. They prepared you for the next level of choice. This is why fear loses its authority when you understand the nature of the path. Fear assumes that one wrong step will destroy everything. Experience shows that even missteps carry information. Life is not fragile in the way fear imagines. It is adaptive. It responds. You are allowed to choose and adjust. You are allowed to commit and learn. You are allowed to stand somewhere fully without promising that you will never move again. Stopping hesitation does not mean freezing yourself into a final identity. It means allowing yourself to inhabit one long enough for reality to respond. From that response, clarity grows. This is the great kindness built into existence. You are not required to know everything. You are required only to be present enough to move honestly. The fog does not lift all at once because life does not want you living in abstraction. It wants you in relationship. Relationship requires engagement. Engagement requires presence. Presence requires choice. When you choose, the path does not suddenly appear far ahead. It appears exactly where you are standing, beneath your feet, step by step, and that is enough. You do not need to rush. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to force outcomes. You simply need to stop wavering long enough to let life recognize you. When you do, something deeply reassuring happens. You realize you were never lost. You were only waiting to arrive. Arriving does not mean reaching a destination. It means inhabiting yourself. And once you inhabit yourself, reality does not need your constant supervision. It knows what to do. It has been waiting for your signal. Choose who you are in this moment. Stand there gently but firmly. Let the fog part where you step. The rest of the journey will take care of itself, not because it is guaranteed, but because you are finally present enough to walk it. That is how the path appears.